Tonight I will finish discussing the book Nietzsche, Prophet of Nazism, The Cult of the Superman by Abir Taha. This discussion I will title Esoteric Nazism, the Jewish Question. As I already alluded to, I wanted to discuss why it was that the Nazis made a mistake, and not just from a moral point of view, saying that what they did was wrong. Really, I don't think I need to point out that the killing of any race of people entirely based upon their race, or simply because you don't agree with them, is wrong. Of course it's wrong. But it's wrong what they did from the perspective of what they caused as a result. The Zionist movement became very strong as a result of Nazism. Whether they killed 600 or 6 million or 600 million Jews and other people is really aside from the point that as a result of what the Nazis did, they did kill people. As a result of what they did, we have seen the Zionist come to the fore, and nowadays if you say anything against someone that is Jewish, it is, well, taboo. You are being a racist. You can't say anything. You can't question whether 6 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust or anything nowadays, thanks to not just the Zionist Jews, but thanks to Hitler. So remember that, those of you who seem to be a fan of Hitler. I assume most of them are not going to be watching a video on my channel. I certainly haven't demonstrated that I have a great love for Hitler, but if you are watching this video, your hero, Hitler, screwed up, and not just because of his morality or his lack of character. If it wasn't for what Hitler did, obviously the Zionist movement would not be what it is today. First, let me discuss how Nietzsche saw the Christian as being the ultimate Jew. And we'll start with a quote from the book here. The Jews are the most fateful nation in world history. Their after effect has falsified mankind to such an extent that today the Christian is able to feel anti-Jewish without realizing he is the ultimate consequence of the Jews. Now then, I would like to discuss a little bit about the history of the Jews. I'm not going to go into any depth. Mostly, I want to discuss the history of what is called pogroms of the Jews. Now, if I cite something in this video, if I cite anything, I want you to understand, just because I'm using the internet does not mean that what I am saying is somehow not historically valid. It is a historic fact that Jews have been persecuted and killed, run out of town on numerous occasions. Millions, probably millions, because the numbers aren't kept, have been killed since the advent of Christendom. Who has been killing them? The Christians. In Europe, the Christians have persecuted and killed the Jews and the Muslims on a regular basis. They continue to do so. It's just not in the news anymore. A side comment before I discuss this in depth, and more in depth. Luciferianism is not another name for Judaism. Now, I don't call myself a Luciferian. Not that I have anything against it. If someone wants to call me that, fine. Lucifera, obviously does call herself a Luciferian. Lucifer is not Satan. Not the same. And she is called Jewish all the time because she's a Luciferian. It's ridiculous to call someone Jewish because they're Luciferian. She's not Jewish. So let me point that out before I go on with discussing some of the history of the Jews. Let me find a few things online and post them here. Read them to you. From Wikipedia, pogrom. A pogrom is a violent riot aimed at massacre or persecution of an ethnic or religious group, particularly one aimed at Jews. Under list of events, Wikipedia, pogroms. 1096, 2,000 Jews killed. Peasant crusaders from France and Germany attacked Jewish communities in the three towns of Svea, Worms, and Mainz. They were the first Christian pogroms to be officially recorded. 1506, 500 new Christians. After an episode of famine and bad harvest, a pogrom happened in Lisbon, Portugal, in which more than 500 quote-unquote new Christian, forcibly converted Jews, people were slaughtered and or burnt by an angry Christian mob in the first night of what became known as the Lisbon Massacre. The killing occurred from 19 to 21 April, almost eliminating the entire Jewish or Jewish descendant community residing in that city. Even the Portuguese military and the king himself had difficulty stopping it. The event is today remembered with a monument in South Domenico's church. 1903 to 1908, 2,000 plus Jews killed. A much bloodier wave of pogroms broke out from 1903 to 1906, leaving an estimated 2,000 Jews dead and many more wounded, as many Jewish residents took arms to defend their families and property from the attackers. In 1905, pogroms against the Jewish population in Odessa was the most serious pogrom of that period, with reports of up to 2,500 Jewish people killed. And the list goes on and on. Remember, these pogroms are the ones that were actually recorded. This is what led to Zionism and the beginning of Zionism. The Jews, since the advent of Christendom, weren't concerned with finding their own country. They wanted to basically become part of whatever country they were living in. They were concerned about that. Not until the pogroms continued and continued. It wasn't until the turn of the century, that is, the 20th century, when Zionism became really a force to reckon with. And the British Empire is what helped create the modern state of Israel. This is historical fact. Let me give you a little bit of the history of Zionism here. This is from Wikipedia about Zionism. Zionism is an organized movement. It's generally considered to have been fathered by Theodor Herzl in 1897. However, the history of Zionism began earlier and related to Judaism and Jewish history. The Hovevei Zion, or the Lovers of Zion, were responsible for the creation of 20 new Jewish settlements in Palestine between 1870 and 1897. Before the Holocaust, the movement's central aims were the creation of a Jewish national home and a cultural center in Palestine by facilitating Jewish migration. After the Holocaust, the movement focused on creation of a Jewish state, usually defined as a secular state with a Jewish minority, attaining its goal in 1848 with the creation of Israel. Now, a bit about its founder, Theodor Herzl. What caused Herzl to originally come up with the idea of bringing the Jews into their own homeland, at least getting the Jews out of Europe where they could feel safe? Wasn't about the creation of a Jewish state at that point. And the reason he did it, here under this Wikipedia again, this is of course about Theodor Herzl. As the Paris correspondent for New Free Press, Herzl followed the Dreyfus Affair, a notorious anti-Semitic incident in France in which a French Jewish army captain was falsely convicted of spying for Germany. Herzl was witness to mass rallies in Paris following the Dreyfus trial, where many chanted "Death to the Jews." Herzl came to reject his early ideas regarding Jewish emancipation and assimilation, and to believe that Jews must remove themselves from Europe and create their own state. Herzl came to believe, through the trial, that the officer was wrongly convicted, which of course he was, if you look into the Dreyfus Affair, which I won't go into here. However, what is interesting is that this was in France, not Germany. Anti-Semitism and the persecution of the Jews was going on all over Europe. And this is the reason why the Jews felt that they needed to get out of Europe and find themselves their own place. Now then, let me again do something that I honestly don't like doing. I'm tired of doing it. But let me again give you my resume so that you people on YouTube, you YouTubers, know that I have some idea what I am talking about. I have a bachelor's degree in education. The particular kind of teacher that I am educated in being is a social science teacher. Social science includes history, geography, government, economics, psychology, sociology. It's a very wide spectrum. History, I've taken Middle East history in college level, 300, even a 400 class, I don't remember. Either my junior or senior year. So it's a high level class in Middle East history. So I know a little bit more about this than the average person. I won't go into the stacks of honors I've gotten. But the thing is, it really irks me to be told by a bunch of snot-nosed little brats out there on YouTube that I don't know what I'm talking about. Okay. Just a couple days ago, first Lucy and then I was told by some numbskull that has an avatar of a wrench. He told us both that we are too stupid to breathe. Well, Mr. Wrench, watch. You were wrong. Seriously, folks, it gets rather tiresome to be told, do your research by people who have never even read a book in their life. Seriously, folks. Enough. We have both done our research. When history is concerned, I know more than the average person. I was schooled in it. I have 70 plus hours as an undergraduate, and I went to graduate school for history. So don't tell me I don't know anything about history. And if I'm citing things online, it's only because I don't have to do the research anymore. If you want to know about what the research is, you do it. It's very easy to type into Google the history of the Jewish people and read, or the history of pogroms against Jews, Jewish people being persecuted before the Holocaust. There's just a number of things that you can type into your keyboard instead of, typing in kitty cats go wild, or songs that inspire me to praise Jesus. Why don't you do some research? Instead of telling us to do so. We've done the research. We've done it. One of the things that I've already discussed in the one that Lucy and I did, the video we've done, you find it here, you can find it on her channel. It's called The Church is the Antichrist, the Beast, the one on murder, on genocide. And I believe it's in that one that I discussed how the Jews were persecuted. See, the Jews for a long, long time were not even allowed to farm the land by the Christians. Now, in Muslim countries, which somehow people believe that the Muslims and the Jews have been at war forever and ever, in the Muslim countries, the Jews were treated as second-class citizens along with the Christians. However, they were allowed to make a living. Why do you think Jews graduated to banking? Oh, it must be because Jews love money. That must be why. Okay, I'm not a Jewish sympathizer at all. The Jewish people are they're the pinnacle of what became Christianity. Matter of fact, here at this point, I'll give you another passage from the book. Nietzsche repudiated Christianity, or what he liked to call Judaicized Christianity, precisely because of its Jewish origins. Indeed, in The Antichrist, one of Nietzsche's major works, a primary anti-Semitic book, which clearly reveals his racial and racist views, Nietzsche says of Christianity that it is an anti-Arian religion par excellence. Quote, Christianity growing from Jewish roots and comprehensible only as a product of its soil, represents the reaction against the morality of breeding, of race, of privilege. It is the anti-Arian religion par excellence. Christianity, the reevaluation of all Aryan values, the victory of Chandala values, the evangelical preach to the poor and the lowly, the collective rebellion of everything downtrodden, wretched,
ill-constituted, underprivileged, against the race, undying Chandala revenge as the religion of love, unquote. Judeo-Christian values, or Chandala values. The Chandala are the outcast, the untouchables, who were considered a lower species and thus excluded from the Indo-European racial caste system, versus Aryan values. That was, according to Nietzsche, the spiritual conflict characterizing world history.
But as I was saying, I have no regard for the Jews any more than I do the Christians or the Muslims. You're all in the same lot, as far as I'm concerned. You worship the same God. You worship him in different ways. Who cares? One gets dunked under the water. Another one sits on a chair when they're going up and down like that when they get married. It's all ritual, folks. It's all ridiculous ritual. There's no difference between a Christian and Jew except ritual. Oh, the Jews keep other holy days. You worship the same God. Do your research. Well, here, let me find another passage to further illustrate how persecuted the Jews were.
I'm reading from the site religioustolerance.org. The title of this article is An Overview of the Persecution of Jews for the Past 2,000 Years. Unfortunately, one biblical theme and one biblical passage have been combined to justify Christian persecution of the Jews that lasted into the mid-20th century. The key biblical theme is the concept that sin, guilt, and punishment can be ethically transmitted from a guilty person to an innocent person. This is seen in various passages of the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. The key passage is in Matthew 27:25, quote, "Then answered all the people, and he said, His blood be upon us and on our children," unquote. The author of the Gospel of Matthew wrote that the responsibility for the execution of Jesus was willingly accepted by first century CE Jews on behalf of themselves and the next generation of children. Together, the theme and passage were interpreted by many Christians as implying that all Jews were equally responsible for the execution of the Jews. This included the Jews who were present when Pilate sentenced Jesus to be executed, other Jews elsewhere in the first century CE, Jerusalem, the Jews in the rest of Roman Empire at the time, and all the approximate 80 generation of Jews from that time until the present. Rationally, this makes no sense. A person obviously cannot be held responsible for what some distant ancestor did almost 20 centuries ago, but it somehow made a lot of sense to many Christians. Even today, the term Christ killer is sometimes hurled at the Jews. Rationally, this makes no sense. Who said Christians were rational? Or Jews? Or Muslims, for that matter? Rationality has no place in these religions, only dogma and blind obedience.
Now, if I'm not sympathetic to Jews, why do I keep showing you these passages? Because Christians, nowadays, you honestly, a lot of you are foolish enough to believe that the Jews are on your side. That's foolishness. Some of you Christians realize how foolish that is. The Jews have a long memory. They're not retarded like certain Christians, especially American Christians, who can only see, 5 years in the past. They have a long memory. And they remember how they were persecuted by the Christians for hundreds and hundreds of years. If some of you Christians are in fact right, and if this cabal behind the scenes is Jewish, let me tell you something. You're going to get what's coming to you. You deserve it. And I am going to sit back and watch, and I am going to have a big fat smile on my face, and I don't care what they do to you. I don't care. I hope, I do, I hope that in my lifetime that I see your karma, Christians, coming to its peak. If you think you are persecuted now, Christians, it'll happen. One day. One day you'll understand what real persecution is all about. You Christians aren't even as persecuted as Lucy and I are. Anyway, I digress, and I felt that this video might digress into a bit of a rant, and if it does, oh well. But there is my end to this very interesting book, taking the perspective of a non-Christian, pagan type idea of the meaning of life and the meaning of man. What should be taken from this book, more than anything, is the idea that we as human beings are not just insignificant little peons, that we are not slaves. Now, Nietzsche and the Nazis believed that there were certain races that are slaves. Well, I don't believe that it's a racial thing. It has to do with what's going on in here, here, and here. Doesn't matter what race you are. Matters how spiritually evolved you are. So, I will be doing in the future more upbeat, more spiritual, more light, and more higher levels of energy videos in the near future. And Lucy and I are already discussing sitting down and having a discussion about what it is that we are trying to say. What is our message? Where do we get it from? A lot of that's going to be from Gnosticism, so we'll be discussing that. Before that, I will be getting into personally a couple of things. One of the videos I plan on doing, I will be discussing Zen Buddhism. What is it? It shouldn't be a very long video because Zen Buddhism is pretty basic. I think if you want my advice, and some of you who watch these videos may actually think that I have some sort of wisdom in me somewhere. If you want my advice, don't pray, don't read anything. If you want my advice in how to bring about a higher state of consciousness, one word: meditate. And you can do that by laying on the ground and closing your eyes, if that's the way you want to do it. You come up with your own meditation techniques. I can show you some, through videos here, some Zen meditations. Zazen, I'll be showing that later when I discuss Zen. But yeah, one word: meditate. You cannot know who anyone else is, who the world is, until you know yourself. And leaving you with that little kernel of wisdom, this is the end of this particular series of videos. May be discussing books in the future, but for now I'm going to focus more on raising that positive energy on my channel, sort of putting the things that Lucy and I did with regards to the anti-Christian videos behind us. We will do them from time to time, but our primary focus from this point forward is going to be the positive side. What is it that we have to offer that the traditional Christians, Jews, Muslims, the Abrahamic religions do not have to offer? What it is that is out there. We certainly didn't start any of the religious beliefs we have, but it is important not to just have beliefs, but to practice a particular set of beliefs. And for me, that's Zen. So, thank you very much for watching again. And this concludes the discussion on this book. And I hope you who did sit through this hour and a half or so total of videos about this book, that you enjoyed it. It certainly takes a lot longer to read the book than an hour and a half. So I hope you were edified by it. I hope you enjoyed it. And good night.